The man I married was never human. When I met Daniel, I thought I'd found the perfect man. He was charming, kind, and made me feel like the luckiest woman alive. But there were things I ignored, things I brushed off as quirks. The way he never got sick, the way he never seemed to sleep, the way his skin sometimes felt strange. And then, one night, I saw him shed it, and I realized Daniel was never human. I married Daniel after only a year of dating. Everyone said it was too fast, but when you know, right? He was everything I had ever wanted, attentive, loving, and always there when I needed him. But looking back, there were red flags, little things that didn't make sense, like how he never talked about his past, or why he never introduced me to his family. He told me they lived far away, and I believed him. I wanted to believe him. Love makes you ignore the things you shouldn't. Then there were the nights. The times I woke up to find him standing by the window, motionless, just staring into the darkness. I'd ask him what he was doing, and he'd always say the same thing, just thinking. I should have pressed him. I should have run. But I didn't. And now it's too late. It started with a dream. At least, I thought it was a dream. I woke up in the middle of the night, my mouth dry, my body heavy with exhaustion. Daniel wasn't in bed beside me. I glanced at the clock. 3:12 a.m. I turned over, expecting to see him standing by the window again. But he wasn't there. Then I heard it, a faint rustling sound from the bathroom. I sat up, my heart hammering. Daniel? No answer. The rustling continued, like fabric sliding against the floor. Slowly, I got out of bed, my feet cold against the wooden floorboards. I crept toward the bathroom, my breath shallow, my fingers trembling as I reached for the doorknob. I pushed the door open, and that's when I saw it. Daniel was standing in front of a mirror, his back to me. But his reflection wasn't right. It wasn't him. It was something else. At first, my mind refused to understand what I was seeing. His reflection moved strangely, like a glitching image. And then, slowly, he reached up and peeled his skin away. A sickening, wet sound filled the room as his human form sloughed off, revealing something beneath. Something dark, slick, and pulsing with unnatural life. His real face, if you could call it that, was smooth and featureless, except for two deep-set, inky black eyes. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. Then, the thing in the mirror, Daniel, tilted its head, and it spoke. You weren't supposed to see this. I let out a strangled scream and stumbled backward, slamming into the wall. My legs felt weak, but I forced myself to run. I didn't care where. I just needed to get away. But Daniel was fast. One moment, he was in the bathroom. The next, he was blocking the doorway. His skin, his human skin, hung loosely from his fingers, dripping onto the floor like a discarded costume. Wait, he said, his voice almost pleading. I can explain. But I didn't want an explanation. I wanted my husband back. The man I married. The man I thought I knew. I shoved past him, sprinting toward the front door, my heart slamming against my ribs. My hands fumbled with the lock, but before I could turn the handle, I felt his arms wrap around me. His touch was cold. Wrong. You don't have to be afraid, he whispered into my ear. I love you. But how could a thing like him love me? I did the only thing I could. I fought. I twisted, kicking and clawing, my nails digging in his flesh, his real flesh. It was slick and rubbery, and as my fingers dug deeper, a thick, dark liquid oozed out. Daniel let out an inhuman shriek and recoiled. That was my chance. I yanked the door open and ran. I didn't stop. Not when I heard him calling my name. Not when I heard the heavy, unnatural sound of his footsteps behind me. I ran until my legs gave out, collapsing onto the neighbor's porch, screaming for help. The porch light flicked on. A door swung open. And then, he was gone. Just like that. The police didn't believe me. They found no trace of Daniel. No records, no belongings. It was as if he had never existed. But know what I saw. I know what I lived through. And sometimes, in the dead of night, I hear him, outside my window, whispering my name, waiting for me to let him back in. The whispering ones. I should have never followed the whispers. I should have stayed inside and listened to the warnings. But I was young, reckless, and thought the stories were just meant to scare us. Now I know the truth. The tall ones are real, and they're always watching. I grew up in a small, isolated village surrounded by a dense forest. My grandparents told me stories about creatures that lived in the woods, beings as tall as trees, with hollow eyes and whispers that could lure you away. They warned us never to go too deep, never to follow the voices, and never to be outside after dark. At 16, I thought it was all just folklore, stories meant to keep kids from wandering too far. But then, one summer night, I broke the rule that had kept our village safe for generations. It started with a dare. My best friend, Elias, and I were bored. The village was quiet, as always, and we craved adventure. So when he suggested we sneak into the woods after dark, I agreed. Just to prove the stories are fake, he smirked. We'll be back before anyone notices. We waited until the village lights dimmed, then crept past the wooden fence that marked the boundary between safety and the unknown. The trees stood tall and motionless, their black silhouettes stretching against the moonlight. The air was thick with silence. And then we heard it, a whisper, not the wind, not an animal, a voice, soft, elongated, calling our names from somewhere in the trees. I stopped, my blood running cold. Elias, did you hear that? He chuckled, but it was forced. It's just the wind, man. Come on. But as we walked deeper, the whispers grew louder, more distinct. They spoke in hushed tones, words just out of reach, beckoning us forward. Then we saw them, tall figures standing between the trees, motionless, watching. At first, we thought they were just shadows, maybe old, twisted tree trunks. But as we got closer, I saw them move, slow, deliberate shifts, their long limbs bending unnaturally, their heads tilted as if listening to us. Elias grabbed my arm. We should go back. But the whispers turned into something else, low, guttural murmurs that seemed to vibrate through the trees. And then, in perfect unison, the tall ones took a step forward. We ran. The forest seemed endless. No matter how far we ran, the whispers followed, growing louder, crawling inside our heads. I glanced back. One of them was right behind us, its elongated fingers reaching out. The air turned thick, heavy, like moving through water. My legs burned. My breath came in sharp gasps. But no matter how fast we ran, the whispers kept pace. Then Elias tripped. He hit the ground hard, and before I could grab him, one of them, stepped between us. Its towering frame blocked out the moonlight, its face a void of shifting darkness. Long, spindly fingers curled around Elias's ankle. He screamed. I lunged, grabbing his arms, pulling with everything I had. For a moment, it was a terrifying tug-of-war between me and the tall one. Then, somehow Elias broke free. We scrambled to our feet and bolted, our bodies running on pure adrenaline. We stumbled back into the village, slamming the gate behind us. The whispers stopped. The tall ones never crossed the boundary. Elias collapsed onto the ground, shaking. Did you see its face? I had, but I couldn't describe it. It wasn't human. It wasn't even a face. Just darkness, shifting like a mass of writhing insects. That night, Elias changed. He wouldn't speak. He just sat on his bed, staring at the wall, lips moving as if whispering something to himself. His mother said it was shock, but I knew better. The next morning, he was gone. His parents searched everywhere, but no one found him. They told the village he must have run away. But I knew the truth, because that night, I heard his voice outside my window, whispering my name. I left the village years ago, but the whispers never stopped. Every night, just beyond the trees, I hear Elias calling me. And sometimes, I see the tall ones, watching, waiting. I should have never followed the whispers. And if you ever hear them, don't listen. Don't look back. Just run.